If you've been taking vitamin D for months and your levels are still low, or your doctor keeps telling you your levels are fine, but you're at the bottom of the reference range and that's not ideal, then there's something that most people never consider, and that's your genetics. Two people can take the same dose of vitamin D, get the same amount of sunshine, eat the same diet, and end up with completely different vitamin D levels. And a big part of the reason why comes down to the genetic variants you were born with. This is also why some people can't rely on sunshine to ensure they have enough vitamin D levels. If you never get your levels tested because you think you get plenty of sun, you still may have a vitamin D deficiency and not be aware of it. Today I'm going to walk through how your genetics influence your vitamin D status, which genes matter the most, and how you can actually test your genetics, because this understanding helps you change the way you approach your vitamin D supplementation. Most people think about vitamin D in a pretty simple way. You take a supplement or you go out in the sun and your levels go up. But in reality, there are 4 distinct stages where genetics can interfere with this process. The first is production, how efficiently your skin synthesizes vitamin D from UVB light. The second is activation, how well you convert that vitamin D from the light or your supplement into the active form. It has to be first converted in the liver, then the kidneys. The third is transport. Once it's in your bloodstream, the vitamin D needs a carrier protein to move it around the body so it can be effective. And the fourth is the receptor activity. Even when your vitamin D reaches your cells, it needs to bind to a receptor to do anything. Your genes can influence all 4 of these stages. Today we're going to focus on the 4 genes that matter the most. Gene 1 is the vitamin D receptor gene, and this is the most important gene here. The vitamin D receptor gene is the one that has the biggest influence on your vitamin D levels. The vitamin D gene produces the receptor protein that activates vitamin D, binds it inside your cells. Once that binding happens, it triggers a cascade of gene expression regulating immune function, calcium absorption, bone formation, cell growth, and everything else that vitamin D does. The VDR is present in almost every tissue in your body, your gut, your immune cells, your brain cells, your heart. So if this VDR gene isn't functioning efficiently, the effects are widespread. The most well-researched variant is known as FOC1, and the minor A variant produces a slightly longer version of the receptor protein, which is associated with reduced VDR activity. The major G variant, the favorable one, is linked to better vitamin D levels from supplementation and sunshine, better calcium absorption, higher bone density. And here's what makes this interesting. This client has the favorable VDR variant, yet their vitamin D levels are only 23. So clearly this is not the only reason why they have a deficiency in vitamin D. Having a favorable genetic variant doesn't protect you from deficiency. You still need the sun exposure, good diet, you need magnesium, vitamin K2 to make the vitamin D work effectively. Genetics tell us your predisposition, but it doesn't tell you where you actually are. And there are other VDR variants worth knowing about. And these have all been associated with differences in bone mineral density, immune response, and disease risk. Celtic Code covers these in their VDR gene report. Gene 2 is GC, it's the vitamin D binding protein. The GC gene produces a protein called vitamin D binding protein, which acts as the transporter system for vitamin D in your blood. Once vitamin D is converted in the liver into the active 25-hydroxy vitamin D form, the form measured on a standard blood test, it binds to this protein and travels throughout the bloodstream to your tissues. Variants in the GC gene are among the most studied in vitamin D research. If your GC variants reduce the efficiency of this binding protein, vitamin D gets cleared from circulation faster than your body can use it. Your serum levels will look lower even though you have good intake of vitamin D. And this is one of the most common genetic reasons why people can consistently have lower vitamin D results on their blood tests even though they're supplementing. They're not doing anything wrong, they just might need higher dosages to get the benefits. Gene 3 is CYP2R1. The activation enzyme. This is a liver enzyme responsible for converting vitamin D into the active 25-hydroxy vitamin D form. If you have variants that reduce the CYP2R1 activity, the conversion step is sluggish. Vitamin D comes in, but doesn't get processed efficiently into the active form. And these people often need much higher doses of vitamin D to get good levels in their blood test results and adequate vitamin D levels. And gene number 4 is the sunlight converter. known as DHCR7. And this is the gene most directly responsible for how much vitamin D your skin can physically create from the sun. When UVB rays from the sun hit your skin, they turn 7-DHC into vitamin D3. People with this variant produce significantly less vitamin D from sun exposure. And my wife is a good example. She used to drive boats to the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. You couldn't have a job with more sun if you tried. Yet when we checked her genetics, it showed that she was most likely vitamin D deficient. She hadn't been tested before. And when we had her vitamin D levels checked, she was very deficient. She came back at 50 nanomoles a litre in Australian units, which comes back at around 20 nanograms a litre in US units. So even though she had a job with plenty of sunshine, she wasn't able to convert that into the active form in her body. So how do you find out which variants you actually have? The tool I recommend is Self-Decode. They analyze up to 83 million genetic variants and generate specific reports for a wide range of health areas. The vitamin D report covers the GC variant and the other vitamin D genes, and they have a specific report just on the VDR gene. The VDR report goes much deeper into that specific VDR receptor and how your genetic results influence your recommendations. One thing I like about Self-Decode is it integrates your lab results along with your genetic data. So you're not just seeing your predisposition in isolation, you're seeing how your genes, your blood markers, and your lifestyle factors can influence your recommendations. I've put a link to Self-Decode genetic testing in the description below. This helps to support the channel at no extra cost to you, and I only recommend tools I actually use. And with that link, you'll actually get a discount from the testing. So genetic testing doesn't replace getting your blood tested. Your genes tell us your genetic predisposition and which interventions are most likely going to work for you. But your blood test shows you actually where you are. And that helps to guide on how much vitamin D you do or don't need to take. Having favorable genetics doesn't guarantee having optimal levels. And having less favorable genetics doesn't mean you can't optimize your vitamin D results. And you also need to make sure that you have the cofactors like vitamin K2 and magnesium to get optimal levels of vitamin D. I'll go deeper into vitamin D and the cofactors in my next video, and check out the description below for links to the genetic testing and advanced nutrient testing. Let me know if you have any questions or leave a comment below.